In the name of the one and three in one, the blessed, holy, and joyful God. Amen. Please be seated. Well, today is Trinity Sunday. It's the day where we celebrate this wonderful mystery we have of the tripartite, triune God, the Trinitarian deity that distinguishes Christianity from our Jerusalem-based monotheistic brothers and sisters, the Jews and the Muslims. Our Trinitarian understanding of God is distinctive. And as we say every Sunday, in a few moments we'll say again today, the Nicene Creed, sometimes the Apostles' Creed, where we talk about the nature of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer, and the things that make this understanding of the divine so distinctive. I like to think of our understanding of God as one of a God who is in its inner, in the divine essence and inner being is relational. Relational, of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, of Creator, Redeemer, Sanctifier, that is dynamic. That is to say, engages internally with each part of the Trinity, a part which each individual piece doesn't make sense, but has to relate in this relationship and this tension. And it's also dimensional, our understanding of God. And by that I mean God the Creator brings this idea of transcendence, of verticality into our understanding of the divine, with the Savior, Redeemer, Son, who lived with us and walked with us, the horizontal, the immanence, and then the ubiquity that came last Sunday on Pentecost, of the Holy Spirit everywhere, the power of God that is, as it were, between every atom and every molecule, holding all being together and apart from which nothing can exist. All three elements together. Now I know, this is very heady stuff. Maybe a little bit too much for 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. But I want to talk about the Trinity here and maybe explain it in the form of a story. Because, sometimes by telling or by teaching, you learn more than just by self-study of something. Is that true? So I'm going to go back about 30 years ago in Alaska. That's where I'm from. I was waiting to be ordained. I finished up divinity school. I was waiting to be ordained, and I needed to get a job. I had to wait about a year till I was the canonical age to get a job. So this is going to surprise all of you in here, shock you, no doubt. Studying to be a priest doesn't have a whole lot of transferable skills in the marketplace. So I was wondering, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back and work at the moving company warehouse that I did when I was in high school? I wasn't sure what was going on. All I knew is that my wife, we'd been married for about a year at that time, who was working, said, "You're going to get a job. You're not going to wait for a year before getting a position in the church." And I said, "Okay." So I applied everywhere, and I had an interview at the Anchorage Daily News, the newspaper up there. And there were a couple things that had happened recently. They had just won their second Pulitzer Prize. They had won a newspaper war. You guys remember back in those days when mid-sized cities had 2 newspapers that you could consult? This tells you back, this was the 90s here, of course. And somebody had gone, I think, for a Neiman Fellowship, one of the editors, and realized that perhaps what was missing in the coverage of the newspapers was coverage of religion that was not related to scandal or something like that. So they hired me to be the general assignment features and religion reporter. And it was a wonderful job, a great job to do. I really learned the discipline of writing and got to meet some amazing and interesting people. including members of the Jewish community in Alaska. Now, the longtime Reform rabbi in Anchorage took a position out of state. And for a while, there was no rabbi for all the Jewish people in the entire state of Alaska, which is about 3 times the size of California. So while the Reform community was calling a new rabbi, another community, the Lubavitch Orthodox community, brought somebody up, Rabbi Yosef Greenberg. And for a while, he was the only rabbi in town. And so he was the spiritual leader for that community for the entire state. Now, let me give you a little description of where the Lubavitch Orthodox faith fits in the spectrum of Judaism. So Reform Judaism is kind of like Episcopal Church, right over here. Then you have the Orthodox. Then you have the ultra-Orthodox. Then, somewhere here over just to the right of Genghis Khan, you have the Lubavitch Jewish Orthodox community. So this raised a lot of questions. So I went to go and interview him and talk about what are some practical issues. What is it like to be Jewish in a place like Alaska? It's not like San Francisco or New York City. How do you stay, how does one who really is observant as a Jew, how do you stay kosher in a place like Alaska? Oh, you'll get a kick out of this. You know what they call themselves? They call themselves the Frozen Chosen. Well, they were lucky to get Rabbi Greenberg because he was a Russian refugee by way of Israel and Brooklyn. And I met him at his house, and that's where the community was meeting. And he was growing a pretty good beard. So I knew he'd fit in Alaska with a pretty good beard like that. He could be a gold miner or something like that. And they chose right, because he grew up in Russia, so he's going to know cold. He's going to be able to handle the cold. But I asked him a question. I said, listen, I know that you have members of your faith. In fact, I knew there was a small Lubavitch community in a place called, just outside of a place called Wasilla, Alaska. You guys have heard of Wasilla? You can apparently see Russia from the front porch there, right? Anyway, I mean, how do people there, number one, the basic thing, on the Sabbath, you're not supposed to operate machinery, so how are people getting from Wasilla to Anchorage to his house? I mean, that is, in a good day, is a rough drive. It's a tough commute. It's kind of like, I don't know, going from Palo Alto to San Francisco during rush hour. It's not easy. But he said, but not just there. How do you get from downtown? How do you get from Hillside when you're not supposed to operate the machinery? He says, Greg, my community walks. My community walks to worship services. And I said, how is that possible? He says, well, they think I don't know, but what they do is they park 2 blocks away out of the line of sight of the front door. They put on their coats, they put on their snowshoes, and they walk to the front door, and we all pretend that they didn't drive to come to the congregation. I love that story, right? Because that is so brilliant. That is exactly how faith works. And I'm talking about Orthodox Judaism here, but we're talking about Christianity, about any type of Buddhism, any type of faith. Wherever faithful people are trying to figure out their identity in a new place, they figure out and they find ways to make it work. They're like the Japanese proverb about bamboo, bending but not breaking. Right? Bending but not breaking. And that's the wonderful thing about religious faith. It adapts and it evolves to fit wherever it finds itself being planted. And I thought that was great. And then I asked him a bunch of other things too, things that that I think would be interesting to find out. So, is there a kosher way to prepare moose? Can Kodiak brown bear be kosher? Leviticus doesn't talk about these things, does it? So these are some of the practical sorts of things that happened, and I wanted to kind of figure out how this would work, because in Alaska there's still a lot of people who live semi-subsistence lifestyles, and this is a real thing. I didn't have beef in my household until I was in the 5th grade. That was a bad year, as my dad didn't get a moose that year or caribou. So these are the practical issues that people run up against. He said, Greg, you need to meet some of the members of the congregation, and I'll arrange for that to happen. So a few days later, we met in a furrier downtown Anchorage. And we went through the, go in the front doors, and all these beautiful furs up on the walls and everything. We go in back, and there's racks of furs everywhere. We got pelts lining the walls that are being cured and prepared. And then we have this big round table that I later found out was a poker table, because the brother of the furrier had won the World Series of Poker a couple years earlier. So I got the poker player at this table, I got the furrier at the table, I got a guy who'd been the milkman for 40 years in Anchorage, I got a couple other people around here, around the table, and I'm asking them some of these questions about what is it like to be Jewish in Alaska? And it was a wonderful opportunity to hear the stories, the stories of faith. But here's the nut of the story. At the end of our discussion, they knew that I had studied for and was preparing to be a priest. And so they turned to me and asked this question: can you describe the Trinity to us? How do you think of the Trinity? How would you talk to an ultra-Orthodox Jewish person about the Trinity? How would you describe the Trinity? So I thought, okay, I'm trying to think quickly on my feet. Okay, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. We used the Nicene Creed, Apostles' Creed. I thought, maybe I can use the example of St. Patrick with the shamrock, right? You get the shamrock with the 3 leaves going around, 3 and 1, 1 and 3. And then I just stepped back a little bit and tried to make it as concrete as possible. And this is where I'm talking about relational God, a dynamic God, and a dimensional God. When Christians think of God, we think of relationships. And one of the primary relationships that's described by the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit, and by the way, Spirit in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek is a feminine word. Sophia, Pneuma, Spiritus, Ruach, Shekinah. These are all feminine concepts. Is one way that I think of the Trinity is of a family. The Trinity is a sort of family. Now, I know that families come in all different shapes, all different sizes, all different colors, and they don't all look like the nuclear family, and not all nuclear families are a great thing. Sometimes our nuclear families are like a sitcom. Sometimes they're like an Arthur Miller play. Most of the time, they're somewhere in between. Am I right? And nobody has a perfect family. No one has a perfect family, except for maybe Jesus and the Holy Family. Everyone else's family is full of dirty laundry, baggage, but hopefully a lot of joy and love somewhere interspersed in between as well. So I'm looking at this community. I'm realizing that family has to mean something very distinctive to a Jewish person than it does from my particular understanding. And that is because in this group of people sitting around the card table, every one of those people had lost a member of their family. Maybe it wasn't mom or dad or a brother or sister, but it was somebody in their family or multiple people in their family had died during the Holocaust. It was of that generation, that living memory, that people's parents, grandparents, aunties, and uncles were taken away. It reminded me also of another friend of mine from divinity school, the Reverend Dr. D. Griffin, who was talking about all these criticisms, the breakdown of the African American family. He's a proud Morehouse man, and he taught me how to tie a bow tie the right way. But he said, the breakdown of the African American family, when has the African American family ever been intact? I thought that's a very, very important point. So what family means to different people means different things, and sometimes it means the absence of what could have been or what should be. But somehow, in amidst all the imperfection of our worldly experience of family, and I come from a family that's imperfect and flawed and fallible as well. That surprise you that a priest would be, have difficult family growing up? Am I the only person in here who has had difficult family things? No. I can't be. And this isn't meant to be a confession. It's more of a statement of fact for all of us, speaking for all of us. I know, I felt like growing up, my parents didn't understand me. They loved me, but they didn't understand me. Not sure they liked me. But they loved me the best way that they knew how to love. And so amidst all the difficulties and the travails of growing up in Alaska, I was trying to think of an example from my own experience of family that would parallel or be an analogy to this divine Trinitarian understanding of family. And it wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't going to the theology. It wasn't going to the creeds. It was as basic as this. I must have been 7, 8 years old. 7, 8 years old, and my father, he had a tough life. He worked a job I don't think he got much satisfaction from, but there are a couple things he loved to do. He loved to restore cars, and he loved to fish. And so it was a day not unlike today, early June in Alaska. We'd get up around midnight, 1 a.m., and then drive from Anchorage down to the Kenai Peninsula and fish on the Kenai River. That's where the world's biggest king salmon are found. My dad loved to do that. And I remember this experience like it was yesterday. 7, 8 years old. It's dim light because it's Alaska and it's the summertime near the solstice. Midnight. My dad's in the front seat of the pickup truck. My mom is in the passenger seat. The radio's not on because they don't want to wake my 4-year-old brother who's sleeping on the bench in back, covered up in his favorite blanket, wrapped up and laying down on the bench. Mom is humming a song. I don't know what it is. Judy Collins, maybe? John Denver, something like that. And Dad is in his zone, driving to the fishing spot. And I don't want to bump my brother because he's so peaceful sleeping there, but it's a little bit chilly. It's a little bit cold still as we're driving. And so what I do is I slide down out of the bench, and I find myself, I lay down on the floor of the pickup truck. And the heat that's emanating up from the bottom of the pickup truck, from the transmission, the powertrain that's operating down below, and the vibrations it's warm. And it's a little bit dirty and the pebbles and stuff like that. I can feel them on the side of my face and everything. But it was kind of chilly, but the warmth is like emanating up and into me. And I can see out of the corner of my eye, my brother sleeping peacefully and wrapped up. My mom humming, and my dad focusing on the road. And I didn't have a word for it right then. But I know the feeling. I never felt as safe, as secure, as blissful as I did at that moment. And for me, that moment, that represents an expression, an experience of family together. Nobody's saying anything except for mom who's humming. No one's saying anything, but we're there. And to me, that's the analogy and the experience I have of Trinity as a 7 or 8-year-old child. And now that I'm a father myself and married for 31 years this year, I realize that my goal in life and my family is to try and create the groundwork to allow those holy moments of Trinitarian experience to bubble up. Can't control it, can't make it happen, but maybe we can just do the work so that experience can happen for my own kids. Now, what are your experiences of Trinity that may arise from your experience of family in its various understandings? Maybe you didn't have a father, but you had a grandfather. Maybe you didn't have a mother, but you had an auntie, an obasan who would spend time with you. Maybe you didn't have a sibling, but you had friends down the street. There's something in that notion of the relationship, the dynamism, and the dimensionality that you have in your experience that takes the theology that we're going to recite in the Nicene Creed in just a few moments and makes it real and profound for each one of you. Amen.